Good morning to you and welcome to your current affairs programs TMI. And of course, as you know, it's the continuation, especially from our Lagos Network studios on ITV. My name is Joshua Okata. Today is Thursday, 20th March 2025, and our focus on the show this morning would be on River State. As you know, a new sheriff is in town as long as River State is concerned. And of course, the president has sworn in a new administrator in the person of Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, retired. And of course, a lot of people are of the opinion that what would be the fate of the good people of Rivers State, given the fact that a suspension had been carried out against the executive governor of the state in the person of Fuminalayi Fubara, his deputy, and of course the 27 lawmakers. Well, I'm being joined by my guest in the person of Daniel Ojuku. He is a senior investigative reporter. Good morning, Daniel, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
The news about the suspension of the governor and his deputy alongside the lawmakers, which happened about, say, 48 hours ago, came as a shock to many. But to some, they felt that this wasn't a shock because the handwriting on the wall was already said, given the back and forth that we have seen in recent times. It has been truly a very serious battle between the governor and his predecessor. You know, dating back from where we saw the issue of the inauguration, where the governor was told certain persons not to invite at the inauguration, which he felt it was too early to start inheriting your governor. You cannot recruit me to be your friend and still want me to inherit your enemies. That was supposedly where the issue started. And of course, his predecessor, as many seem, felt this was too early, a disloyalty from someone who I'll be handing over the affairs of the state to. It also lingered even up to when we saw the APC chapter, the chairman, in the person of Okocha, who accused the governor of running the state aground. Even his predecessor recently said the governor can actually be impeached and heavens will not fall. Yes. As if that was not enough, we saw the issue of the 27 lawmakers issuing a letter of notice asking the governor to respond in 14 days. All of these made some people think that there was something actually happening in the pipeline waiting to come to a realization, and now the suspension. What is your take on the issue of all of these I've just painted, alongside with the fact that some say if there is no justice, there can be peace?
Okay, the situation in Rivers is quite unfortunate because there are no real victims. There are just different political actors who have committed several infractions. So it's one thing to say, oh, Fubara is a victim, or the lawmakers are the victims, or Wike has tried, the president has tried. But if we look at it, the real losers in this are the Nigerian people, particularly the Rivers people, because the laws have been violated from the moment when Fubara decided to demolish the State House of Assembly complex. It was a violation of laws. To him presenting his budget before four lawmakers, that was a violation of the law. But then Fubara had also been puppeteered. He was being controlled.
By who?
By his predecessor, because in his recent speech he did say that his commissioners who resigned willingly are back. Now that clearly shows he did not pick those commissioners, because if you select your own commissioners and they resign, you're not going to come tell the world that, oh, in my efforts to reconcile differences, I have even welcomed commissioners who resigned, meaning that the other party who you're reconciling with are the ones who want those commissioners there. So you're working with lawmakers who were handpicked by another party. You're working with commissioners who you did not choose. You're working with different people who your predecessor wants in place. So all of these show that there's a lot of gimmicks, political gimmicks going on the ground. So when all of these are going on, and then the House of Assembly is saying, "Oh, we're going to impeach you. We're sending you notice, and not just to you, we're also sending to your deputy." And they're also investigating the state's chief judge. Now, all of this indicates that they want to do something, because you can't impeach the governor without the chief judge setting up an independent panel to probe the allegations you have against the governor. So, if everyone is saying Fubara did this and Fubara did that, what's the role of the deputy governor? What was the deputy governor's role in all this? Ngozi Odu. So it was a calculated move to first go after the chief judge, to sound him out that yes, we're coming after you if you don't play by our rules. And then you're going after the governor and also going after the deputy. So in case you impeach the governor, the deputy doesn't take over. It then gives you the room for the speaker to take over. And then the president, in his own wisdom, has decided to come out and say, look, we're suspending democracy in River State by invoking Section 305. Now, you've used Section 305 to say nobody in that state is going, no elected official should govern. So the governor is out of seat, the deputy governor is out of power, the 27 House of Assembly members are out of power. The Constitution doesn't give the president that power. People of River State went to the ballots to say we're voting.
Before we go deeper into the constitutional amendment that gives the president that veto power, as it were, to suspend the governor as well as his deputy and the lawmakers, let us talk a little about certain, submissions that you made. When you say there are no victims, all we're saying here are just political players or actors, as it were. Yes, I can understand to a certain extent when you say there are no victims, given the situations you just painted, where the governor demolished the House of Assembly, did this, did that. But of course, are you aware that to a large extent, the governor is more or less the, how would I put it, the vote of the people. He's a reflection of the vote of the people. Now, if you have to remove the governor, you have to remove the deputy, you remove the lawmakers, are you also aware that this whole squabble is not complete except you bring in the factor of Wike, considering the fact that he is a minister? He neither lives in River State nor does he hold any elective position, but he is involved in the squabble. So in my question, when I ask you, there is no justice, there is no peace without justice. So if you have to deal disastrously on these persons without bringing in the fact of Wike, would you say justice have been carried out?
Okay, in Wike's case, Wike has been vocal about his disagreements with Fubara. So it's not news that Wike played a role here. And when I say there are no victims, I'm talking about every actor who has been involved. The president, the Rivers State governor, the House of Assembly. The real victims, like I said, are the Nigerian people and the Rivers people particularly. Now in Wike's case, it is hard to see what constitutional breaches he has made. Because it is easy to say, yes, Wike has indeed played a major role in this conflict. Wike and Fubara have gone at each other's throats. He has made vocal comments and said, yes, people have propped you up, people have given you ill advice. That's Wike to Fubara now. And saying, you will see, you thought you had the backing of the court, you thought you had this, you had that. So his body language had indicated that, yes, he was heavily behind what was going on in River State. Now, Wike's loyalties or his duties are to the president. He's no longer the governor. He owes Rivers people nothing any longer. He's just their ministerial nominee.
So what's his interference there?
Now, Nigeria has a long history of godfatherism. We've seen it in Edo State between Oshomole and Obaseki going after each other. We've seen Tinubu's hands in Lagos State. We've seen different governors who have vacated office. Even Amechi tried to, interfere with River State when Wike took over governorship. So godfatherism is an issue that has been long-standing in Nigeria. So Wike seems to want control. He seems to want to keep Fubara in power. Remember that Wike himself put Fubara in quotes. He campaigned for him. He went all out. Fubara cannot say he independently won the election without Wike's help. We had the same situation in Kaduna State where El Rufai went all out for Ubasani. So Wike has heavy stake in Rivers State. Now, with the president deciding to illegally sack the governor and the House of Assembly, it is up to the president to decide as well if he wants to vacate Wike as a minister. So whatever has happened to Fubara and the House of Assembly is the making of the president. There was no law that was used. The state of emergency, fine, you can initiate a state of emergency, make 6 months period where you take over. But in taking over, the constitution does not provide for you to replace these people.
That's where my next question would be, because we're going to be looking at the law book as regards the legal implication of suspending the governor, which is an arm of government on its own.
Yes.
Because we understand that there is a section of the law that states that bringing in or removing the governor along with his deputy takes 2/3 of the House. But you have suspended, or as it were, thrown that particular section of the law into the waste bin by bringing in an administrator. The president, he relied on section 305 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, which I'm going to read here, which states that as a situation of national danger, disaster, or terrorist attack in which a governor suspends normal constitutional procedures to regain control. That's where he's hinging on. Now, the last time I checked, having a governor in place, right, does not in any way depend on the president. So, could we say, by virtue of this, that we're running a constitution under the current political class?
The constitution we're running is flawed, because for section 305 to be highly effective, you need to have state policing, or you need to have a situation where the governor has control over security. Now, the president relied on section 305 subsection 3c, which says where there's a breakdown of peace and security, you can invoke a state of emergency and then take over for a period of 6 months. Now, if there's a breakdown of peace and security, it's the president's responsibility. It's not the governor's responsibility, because even though the governor is the chief security officer of his state, he has zero security powers.
True.
He receives the security votes to put together vigilantes or something. Sometimes they use those monies to help the police, but the governor cannot direct the police. He cannot give an instruction to the commissioner of police and he'll follow. The commissioner of police is not under the governor, he's under the federal government. So if the federal government says the entire police force and military should stand down in Rivers State, there's nothing the governor can do. So if peace and security breaks down in Rivers State, the best the governor can do is to reach out to the president to say, look, we need help here. It happened in Lagos State 2020 during the NSAS period. Security was down, and then the governor declared a state of emergency. Everybody had to go indoors, and then the military took over. The governor still came out to say, look, I can't control the police, I can't control the military. And we saw it play out about 2 years later in Magodo, where the governor had a shouting match with a police officer. And he said that he couldn't control the police. So why is the president saying that because of a breakdown in peace and security, Fubara has failed? Yes, Fubara has his shortcomings. He broke the law in so many ways. The Supreme Court is clear on that. The House of Assembly, even the House cannot even independently impeach a governor. There's a process. The House has to also collaborate with the chief judge, and the chief judge is also supposed to get an independent party, an independent panel which has no political affiliation, has no links to the executives, the legislature, or the judiciary, to sit and consider the allegations against the governor before an impeachment process occurs. So all these steps have been ignored for us to now have a situation where a president who was elected by the same Rivers people who also elected their own governor has now decided that, look, the powers that the entire people of Rivers State have is null and void. Rivers should be the third most populated state in Nigeria. So you have that large number of people, and you're telling them that their franchise doesn't count. Look, I can decide who governs you at a particular time because I decide that currently peace and security has broken down.
All right, now let's look at the swearing in of the new administrator, the person of Iboketi Iba retired. Now, he is the new sheriff in town, and of course, considering the fact that he has been installed as the new, so to speak, interim leader for a period of 6 months, it's also enshrined, according to the oath he took, that he is not required or mandated to make new laws.
Yes.
So it means that there will be no legislation for the next 6 months. And if he has to make laws, it will be regulation, which will also be approved by the Federal Executive Council and promulgated by the President of the state. So where is the will of the people here, considering the fact you have installed somebody or imposed somebody on the good people of River State against their will?
Yes.
So where is the will of the people?
It's an illegality.
Say that again.
It's an illegality. Putting in an administrator to govern Rivers people is highly illegal. Let me break it down. To make laws is to put together statutes, to put together guidelines, to put together a mode of operation. Law is pretty much your way of life. Now, before a law can come into effect, everybody has to be considered, which is why the state has lawmakers. Now, lawmakers are selected from communities. People come together and say, in this our constituency, this is the person who should make laws on our behalf. Another community says, this is the person we are voting to make laws. So when every community comes together, we say, oh, you all go. When you're casting your ballots and deciding what laws we follow, the majority of you would decide for us what happens. Now, an important law is the appropriation. That's the budget. So if the governor submits a budget, say, look, this is what I think the state needs, the people who represent the assembly who represent, are supposed to consider it, does this favor the people? And then the people are supposed to send feedback. Look, we need schools here, we need this here, we need that here. That process hasn't happened. It's, according to the Supreme Court, whatever appropriation you had with the 4 lawmakers is illegal. So we don't have allocations. And the Supreme Court has stopped allocations to River State. But the president has opened up the purse, opened up the coffers to say, look, sole administrator, take the money and do what you like. So one man is now deciding for millions of people. The sole administrator is now playing to the gallery of the president. So the president has now acted on behalf of every single River State indigene. The president is governor, the president is legislator, and the president is Supreme Court judge. Because if a Supreme Court can say, look, because there is no assembly and process has not been followed, it means that you can't have appropriation. And the president has said, look, I can decide to give you appropriation regardless of what the Supreme Court says. That is clearly disregarded. He has clearly disregarded the law, clearly disregarded the Constitution. So the Constitution is suspended for now. What we are experiencing is military regime.
I was about going there, but that will be shortly after this break. Please, do stay away. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, if you're just joining, it's TMI coming to you live on ITV Network right here in Lagos. Our focus in the last few minutes has been on River State, especially with regards to the new administration, the person of Vice Admiral Iboketi Abbas, retired. And of course, we'll be looking at the fate of the Rivers people for the most part, let's say 6 months from now. And of course, we'll be looking at the strategy put in place. How far is it from a military style of approach? And of course, our guest right here who will be giving us so much of this perspective is Mr. Daniel Ojukwu. So let's talk about the issue of bringing in an administrator, which you said is not far from a military style of approach. Could you please talk more about that?
Okay, if you listen to the broadcast by Lateef Fagbemi, that's the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, he reiterated on multiple occasions, about 2 or 3 times, that the president is not just the head of state, but is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So what he was basically saying is, yes, the president can act in his democratic regalia as head of state, But currently, what he's doing is acting out his role as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and he's pretty much saying that this is a peculiar situation, and it calls for military intervention, because that's the only thing the commander-in-chief of the armed forces does, carry out military interventions. Bringing in a sole administrator who is a retired Navy vice admiral points to the fact that they want to uh, they want to handle their states with military might. He could have decided to put in an interim democratic leader,
At least a civilian.
a civilian,
Yeah.
someone who would continue from where Fabara stopped. He could have kept the State House of Assembly in place, even if it's still illegal to suspend the governor. But if he was looking at the best interest of the Rivers people, their lawmakers should be untouched. But the argument is, oh, leaving the lawmakers favors Wiki or favors one party, and that was what Fabimi was pretty much saying, that let everybody go home, and then later, and then he did say that he would encourage the president to do so with more vitality and vigor going forward. So you're sounding a warning to elected officials that, look, if any of you does something the president doesn't like in the future, he's going to suspend the constitution again. Because if you look at it, there's no, every lawyer who has addressed this matter, some who, even who supports the president, will tell you, oh, he's using his discretionary powers, he's using emergency powers. But none of these things are provided for in the constitution. Nigeria is not at war. Nigeria is not experiencing disasters. If we were at war, or if we were in a situation where disasters were occurring, then you can say yes, the president is exercising some powers beyond the constitution. But Rivers State is not in that situation. Everything that's playing out in Rivers is clearly political. Yes, a couple of pipelines were blown up, which could affect the Nigeria's GDP. Yes, we can't dispute that fact. But there are better ways to handle it. You can declare a state of emergency, put in the military, tell people to go indoors for 48 hours. You secure the pipelines, you fight the militants and whatever, and then you proceed, you return things back to normalcy. That's how you address issues. You don't say because a few miscreants, militants blew up a few pipelines, you then suspend democracy for 6 months. It's ridiculous. That's Gestapo style, that's military in its plain form.
Now, aside from the fact that a strong message, as you said, had been sent to all elective leaders, putting them on standby that you could be removed even by suspension of the law. Now, some persons are of the opinion that Vice Admiral Iboketi Ibas is a stooge of Nyesom Wiki. What's your thought on that?
I like to not delve into matters that is difficult to substantiate. Now, in this Ibot's case, his relationship with Nyesom Wiki may or may not be relevant, because a lot of military officials frolic with politicians. They have this relationship. If your governor and a what they call it now, a military official or a policeman, high-ranking policeman operates in your region, there's a very high possibility that you'll meet, you'll shake hands, you'll snap pictures together. Now, I know that Wiki is a very how do I put this now? Wiki is very interested in power. Wiki is very outspoken. He's very dogged. He's very controversial. Yes, I know that he has done a lot of things that a lot of people would consider infractions. And when you even look at it, you know that yes, this man, he has berated a lot of journalists. He has thrown his weight around. He has clearly told his party members that regardless of what you do, you can't do anything against me. So I would personally think Wiki is dangerous for our democracy. Yes, but his relationship with the new administrator, maybe it plays a role, maybe it favors him, but only time will tell.
All right, now what will be the fate of Rivers people
Uh, Ri-
during and after 6 months?
okay, the fate of Rivers people. First off, it remains to be seen if the National Assembly ratifies what the president has done. If the National Assembly is strong enough, because there are Rivers lawmakers in the National Assembly, there are lawmakers from opposition parties, lawmakers from other regions, who know that whatever they do now will set a precedence going forward. If they accept it, they are in danger going forward. If they don't, they give our democracy a sort of cushion. So Rivers people have to then look to the National Assembly, their reps, members, and their Senate, and say if these people are backing this move, then we didn't vote right. But beyond that, if the National Assembly does approve it, then Rivers people would fall out of Nigeria's 37 entities practicing democracy. That's the 36 states and the FCT. So if Rivers States for the next 6 months if the Rivers people live under this administrator, then they will likely be living in fear. They will likely be living, walking on eggshells, because there will be a lot of military presence. There will be a lot of concern. There will be a lot of wailing. People are going to question how long this will last, because after 6 months, the National Assembly will review to see if they should continue or not. And that is not a way to live under democracy. There are states where violence have been occurring regularly. If you go to the southeast, you have sit at home on several days, on Mondays for a long period of time, over 2 years, about 2 years now. And a lot of people are dying regularly. People cannot move around freely. We haven't declared a state of emergency. We haven't sacked their governors. We haven't taken over those places. But Rivers that has political issues will then have a situation where their people can no longer live freely. We're taking away their liberties. We're taking away their freedoms, and making them believe that, oh yes, because of the issues between Fubara Wike and the State House of Assembly, you no longer have the right to live as free people. It's bad precedents, and I do not envy them.
All right, as we coast home on this conversation, 24 hours ago, I dabbled on some, live sessions on Spaces, X to be precise. And I heard some person saying that if the Rivers people allow this to slide, they've lost their state. What's your take on that as we coast home in less than 1 minute?
Them losing their states, they would lose their state. Right as it stands, they will lose their state for a period of time. But what happens after 6 months, if the National Assembly approves this, would then decide going forward. Because I expect Fubara and his team, or the House of Assembly members, to use this period to lobby. Because that's what happens in political situations. They make political solutions, they lobby, they make concessions. At the end of it all, everybody shakes hands and come back to run the state. But if they don't find that balance, then it's possible it extends all the way to 2027 when another election occurs, and it will be dangerous.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. All right, that's our offering for you on the show right here in Lagos, the city of excellence. And of course, thank you so much for watching.